Welcome, everybody. Happy to be here today, and thank you for joining us today to the next session, Effective Practices for Integrating Group Work into Online Courses. So my name is Edgar Gonzalez. I am a Client Experience Manager with Blackboard, and I'm actually happy because sometime back in 2020, I got this shirt so that I could wear it for some event that would take place so that I could represent Blackboard. And I never got the chance to wear that shirt until today. And you can see that my polo shirt. So I am so excited, but I am more excited to introduce our two speakers for today because this is a great session. Again, it aligns nicely with our current circumstances about how we can facilitate group work in the online setting. So let me introduce first Dr. Han Nee Chong. Han Nee Chong is an assistant professor at the School of Education and program chair for the Master of Education in Educational Leadership at Hawaii Pacific University. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Studies from the University of Hertfordshire. A little bit of a mouthful, that word for me, but anyway, so she has a Master of Arts degree in Communication from Hawaii Pacific University and a doctorate degree in Educational Leadership from the University of Southern California. She is experienced instructional designer, skilled in curriculum development, assessment, and teaching in higher education. Han Nee also has designed multiple and successful online courses in collaboration with faculty teams and was named, and I'm so happy and proud to say that she was named 4 years in a row as a winner of the Catalyst Award for exemplary courses from 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. So I am so excited to actually share that with all of you because I've had the opportunity to interact with Han Nee in the past. And again, I admire her tremendously for these accomplishments. Now, let me also introduce our other great speaker, Dr. Ann Williams, Doctor in Business Administration. She's a professor of management and the academic assessment coordinator at Gateway Community College in Connecticut. She has over 20 years of higher education teaching experience, and her pedagogy focuses on student-centered learning with authentic assessments. I love that. Authentic assessment is so essential, especially nowadays. So, Anne's courses include human resources management, enterprise risk management for accountants, business statistics, finance, critical thinking for business. That's where that authentic assessment really aligns nicely, and economics as well. So, as the assessment coordinator, she encourages a culture of continuous improvement through measurement of outcome attainment and reflection across all academic areas. Dr. Ann is committed to supporting students as they identify pathways to their academic and professional and personal goals. So not just academic, professional, personal goals. And she was awarded Faculty Member of the Year for 2014. Great accomplishment. In addition to her work at Gateway Community College, Dr. Ann provides management consulting on enterprise risk management and employee engagement. And she also knits hats for the homeless. That's lovely. I admire that greatly, by the way. And she serves as a Blackboard exemplary course reviewer. So again, all these awesome individuals coming together to share these with you today. So it is my pleasure now to turn it over to Dr. Han Nee Chong so that she can get us started with the presentation.
Thank you, Edgar. Aloha, first of all, and a warm welcome to Blackboard Digital Teaching Symposium and to our presentation today. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. It's sunny here, 67 degrees, so that's cold for Hawaii weather. I know we don't get much sympathy from people around the world when we, complain about the weather. I'm excited to share with you today the effective practices for integrating group work into online classes. So let's get started. So we all know that group work is an integral part of learning. It's a staple in our classroom. Human's theory on group dynamics state that when individuals have common activities that they work with, they tend to have more interaction and then develop attitudes, whether it be positive or negative with each other. And we like that. So when COVID-19 pandemic hit, and most of our classes went online almost overnight, one of the biggest struggles that I've heard from faculty that I've worked with in my role as instructional designer is how do we keep the interactions engaging, right? How do we manage group work processes in an online setting, in a virtual setting? So that's what I want to cover today. The objective of my presentation is to explore ways to effectively manage the group work processes using Blackboard tools and other tools that we have at our disposal, increasing the group interactions when we have these group projects, and also how to reduce groupthink when everyone just kind of agree with each other when we have our students doing group work. So on this slide here, you can see the Tuckman stages of team development. And I want to use these stages of team development to kind of guide us through how I use group tools in our learning management system to both manage the group work process and also to increase interactions and engagement. For example, at the beginning, when we first have the students form their groups, they're at the forming stages. The students may be excited, they're anticipating, meeting their group members, working together, but there may be also some anxiety among group members meeting virtually and thinking, how am I going to work with these people that I don't meet face to face, that I don't get to sit down together and discuss about? So during the forming stages, what tools can we use to help our learners, to guide them through? And then after that, I'll go into the storming stage after the groups are being formed and people are comfortable, but they may be conflict among the group members, and so I will guide us through what I did in my class, and hopefully that will help you as you set up your groups too. Okay, so during the forming stage here, when we are first forming a group in Blackboard, there are a few ways you can form the groups. So for example, using the group tool, you can either do the groups manually, set it down manually one at a time, or you can tell Blackboard to form all the groups for you, right? So for myself, I like to form them individually. And then on top of that, you can also decide if you want to give your students autonomy to self-enroll into the group, so that, and you can set the limit to it, right? To say, okay, no more than 5 in a group. And then, here are the topics and people can sign up for the groups. So that would be the self-enroll, to give your students the option to do that. Or you can say, you know what? No, I'm just going to, take that guesswork out of it and randomly assign. So this part of the forming in the group, the instructor has a lot of autonomy of how they want to do it. One time I have a synchronous class session, so we were running it through Blackboard Collaborate. What I did was I literally put everybody's names in a hat, and then I would draw them out during the synchronous session to say, oh, okay, you're in this group and you're in that group. And so I had a Harry Potter hat, the sorting hat at work that I would use to do that during synchronous sessions. So, how's Gryffindor, and right? So you can make them really fun during the forming of the group to help your learners, get excited about being in a group. The other thing I wanted to point out is the tool availability. So when you set up groups in Blackboard, automatically on the screen here, you can see that all these tools are made available to your students. But what I found that in the beginning, I just formed the group and then I let all the tools up. And I found that it's very confusing to the students, because some of the tools they don't really use in their group work. And so it confuses them. So what I normally pick is I only pick 4 things to include in the tool availability for the groups. So I would pick discussion board and allow them to form their own discussion thread, email for sure, so that they can email each other within the group, file exchange in case they have, PDFs or PowerPoint files or any other files they want to exchange with each other, they can upload. And also Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Now, the last one, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, has been really good. It has been a lifesaver for my students, because what they're able to do is, same like we're holding the synchronous session of classes, the group members can run their own synchronous discussion session using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So those would be my 4 top picks. I would not enable the ones that I don't use. For example, they don't use blogs, they don't use journals and tasks in my group project, and therefore those would be the ones that I uncheck. I have found that this focus selection of tools really helps students decide, okay, here are things we need. Okay, so once the groups have been formed and the learners get to know each other and all of that, now we get to the storming stage. This is where you would hear complaints from your students. Maybe you start getting emails like, oh, professor, I can't get a hold of this student, or this student never, contribute. We are late because of, this other student and all of that. So during the storming stage, when there's this anxiety and there's this complaints and all of that, I think it really helps when the instructor set up help guide the learners to set up some group expectations. So here I like to use the group contract. The group contract is a collaborative document that I put up. I have a template and I put them up on Google Docs, and then I tell each group that they need to discuss and come up with a group contract unique to their own group. So they would put down the contact information, like, exchange their contact information, how they prefer to be contacted with each other. And then they'll put down, their goals, what their commitments are to the group members, set out some deadlines. For example, when will we meet? What will we achieve? What are some milestones? What are things that we agree that we'll be doing? And what happens? What happens when we don't meet those requirements, right? What would we as a group prefer to do if someone did not meet those requirements? So they came up with the group contract themselves, and that's part of their group assignment. So I have found that really helped, especially during the storming stage, where helping students set the expectations for that. So you can have, if you wanted to, you can have, after students finish, drafting up their group expectations, the group contract, have them put them up on, for example, the group discussion forum. And then that way, it's easy if they want to go back to it or have this further discussion about the group contract. Also, during this time, while with helping the groups get settled and talking to each other and all of that, I have found that it's really helpful when I tell groups that they have to meet virtually at during certain intervals, right, for their group project presentation. So I think here, when we tell students to, just meet, just meet, discuss, some do, some don't, right? But when it becomes a requirement, I have found that when I require my groups to hold scheduled virtual meetings among themselves without my presence and come up with actionable items to say, okay, when did you meet, right? You have to write a short report, a page or something to let me know, right? When did you meet? What did you discuss about? What were the actionable items that you come up with, right, through your meetings? So what this does, it helps the groups to not procrastinate. It also helps them, make it a point that they need to meet collaboratively, right? Using Collaborate, and then they have to interact with each other early on. So again, going to Human's theory, when they interact, the more opportunity you open up for your students to be able to interact early on with each other, the more they have this connection with each other that's really helpful later on when they're doing their group work. After a while, I don't even need to require it anymore, because then they know each other, and then they started to hold this collaborate session by themselves without me even have to remind them. So now during the norming session, right? Our norming session is when everyone has already, knew about each other. They are comfortable working together and all of that. I like to tell them that it's good that you know what you're working on, but I may not know as an instructor, if you have any questions where you are and all that. So what I normally do is I set up a Blackboard Collaborate document for each group, and then I put the link inside the description of the group itself. So as you can see on the screen here, I put in the description so that when they click on the link, it takes them directly to the Google Doc, and then I can see the contribution of each person and if they are advancing in their group work. So this would be a sample of what the Google Doc looks like for a class that I'm teaching right now, ED 3500 Service Learning. Okay, so performing. At the performing stage, students really want to do really well in their group assignments. Generally speaking, it's really helpful when I put up a rubric. So I normally set up the rubrics ahead of time for all my assignments. So as you can see here for this class, I have a project presentation and I have a proposal, right? A project proposal. So I would put up the rubric associated with each assignment early on, and then I would point the students to them so that they can use them as they plan and discuss and brainstorm to help them set the expectations for what they needed to do. And then at this stage, right, the students are comfortable, they like each other. And so one of the things that I have found to be a problem is too much conformity, too much cohesiveness. And what I meant by that is everyone agreeing with everyone else, very little critical thinking going on. So at this stage, while they're comfortable and they're performing, right, I like to throw in a little wrench to try to disrupt that a little bit, that comfortable, right, feeling a little bit, to get them to start looking at their project in a more critical way, right? Constructive but critical way. So to reduce groupthink, I like to use Bono's 6 thinking hats. So with this, with the 6 thinking hats, how I do it is I have the students during a synchronous session look at each other's presentation and then give feedback by assuming a role. So if you can see on the slide here, the 6 thinking hats, if you are wearing a white hat, then you're assuming the role of being, a neutral person, right? If you're wearing like the red hat, then you are assuming the person that can give feelings, for example, right? So I think by letting students wear these different hats, it gives them permission to really, look at their peers' work and the other group members' works and be able to voice different viewpoint, playing devil's advocate, for example. And actually, students really like that because it's like, oh, it's not me being critical, it's just me wearing this hat and giving examples of, how I feel the presentation or the group work can be improved. And that's it. We are at the end of my presentation right now. I look forward to your questions later on. And now I will hand over to my co-presenter, Dr. Ann Williams. Thank you.
Well, Han Nee, thank you so very much for that broad coverage of the group tools and what the benefits are of group assignments and how to make them strong. I found that I wrote down some notes as you were going through yours that I have ways that I think that my programs, my group activities can be enhanced. So thank you. Also, here in Connecticut, I don't have anything fun like Hawaii, but we might get a little snow today. So winter might not quite be over here. So let's get the slides moving forward here. Well, I went too far there as it was not reacting. So we're going to talk about a project that I do in one of my classes. And the first thing that we have to identify is why are we doing it? Why are we picking group work as a method of delivering course content and helping students to master the material? There are lots of benefits for the students, right? The idea that there's something in it for them. We've learned that if students know why it's important to them, they're more likely to put some effort into it. So one thing is that students actually graduate faster. if they gain all this student engagement stuff, the idea that they make friends, they learn more about each other, they learn more about the college and the community, they actually graduate faster with higher GPAs. They also develop the soft skills that our advisory board members or community partners are telling us that they want from new hires. They want people that have leadership experience. They want students who have learned how to collaborate, how to advocate for their position, and to be strong communicators, to be clear in what they need and how they can get a job done with each other. It also creates networking, networking opportunities. The idea that they get to know each other, they get to know more people within the college because of the speakers that we bring in, people's within the community, and it just develops that network that they can start to use to get a job, because we know that most jobs are not filled in the traditional way that maybe we got our jobs. There's a lot of how did you find out about it, and it was through connections and experiences. We also do service learning, and service learning has a huge benefit for engagement. The idea that anything that you can do that gives a student more breadth and knowledge of each other in ways that they can continue to build community partnerships through their lifetime is important. At the end of the class, they have a portfolio. They have, this is everything I did that related to this course content, so they can track and demonstrate their knowledge of the course content. Why do it from my point of view? What's in it for me, right? What the faculty member matters. Also the institution and your community partners that you're going to be pulling in. Well, we're all concerned about persistence, retention, and graduation rates. Anything that we can do that improves retention, student engagement is going to have positive impacts on those measurements. Also, personally, I've noticed that in my student feedback surveys that classes that have strong group projects tend to have much stronger performance evaluations for me, which helps in promotion or tenure packets. Our employers want these soft skills, as I said. Our advisory boards really want to hear from our students that they know how to work in groups. Workforce readiness, hands-on experience, key factors in getting a job. And we also gain the knowledge of what our employers need through the service learning projects. So the class. I teach a Principles of Human Resources Management class, which is for first and second year students here at our community college. We have an extremely diverse student body. We require this class for most of our business majors. We have about 10 different business majors, and it's a typical 3-credit course. We offer it in the 7-week cycle and also the 15-week cycle, and we offer it in all of our formats. We haven't done it fully on ground in a little while, but hopefully we will at some date in the future return to fully on ground operations. We offer it online synchronous, online asynchronous, and then the hybrid model, which is a flipped 50% on ground, 50% asynchronous work, getting ready for the on-ground classes. The project. Each group selects a job title, and they follow that through the process from the very beginning of designing a job all the way through selecting a candidate for that job. So they write a job description. They formulate a recruiting strategy, including the posting and budgeting. A key factor there for me is whether or not they're developed a system that will create a diverse population for their pool of candidates. They also design and propose an interview process along with the questions. And here, some teams are now thinking about taking this differently and not doing a straight interview, but doing work projects, demonstrations instead, which may actually make a more diverse pool, since you're not doing one-on-one interviews that might be an issue with some applicants with disabilities. They conduct the interview. I bring a qualified candidate to the table for them to meet with, and that candidate has the option of behaving as they wish in the sense that sometimes they present as an extremely qualified candidate, and sometimes they make mistakes during the interview. And there have been times when the students have said, do we really have to continue interviewing this person? So that they have an experience with a broad spectrum of events that could happen during the interview process. They then make a justified hiring decision. And at the very end of the semester, during the final, they perform a performance evaluation on everyone else in their group. Community engagement. So I do reach out to community partners in order to pull them in and help students get to know a diverse group of people, not only in human resources, but also within our college environment. Over the years, I've touched on a lot of pool groups, but from HRM practitioners, we've had the campus director of human resources. We're part of a 12-college consortium, and we've had the director of talent acquisition come. We've had the chief human resources officer for a major employer, a Fortune 500 company here in Connecticut. And they speak to specific portions of the class. If they come in, they might speak about how the job descriptions matter, or the director of our human resources was an attorney, and she spoke very strongly about what you can and can't do during the interview process to protect yourself from a suit for discrimination. But we also bring in other people from the college. The college president has often come into my classes, and the dean of academics. And that has many benefits, but the simplest one is that it puts these people back in the classroom. For many of these individuals, it's been years and years since they've directly interacted with students in a classroom environment. So it helps them to see what's going on, and it also humanizes them from the student perspective. And some of them have built relationships and gotten letters of recommendation because of what they've done. Also, we work with community partners. The idea that we can reach out to the community, find a need, mostly in our nonprofit sector, and identify projects that we can help them with. So we work with our community partners and we say, well, do you want help with your job descriptions? Do you want help with your interview process? Where can we help you? Which stage of the talent process do you need help with? And then the students can focus their project that semester on that piece of it by working hand in hand with the community partner to meet their needs. Grading. Students always want to know, well, what's in it for me? How am I going to get an A? I hope they want an A. Not always. So sometimes students don't want an A. So grading. I use a 1,000-point system. Many of you probably do. The group project is 40% of their class grade, so it is significant. They have to put effort into this if they want to do well in the class. 480 points come from exams, multiple chapter exams. They're grouped, and they're multiple choice or and short answer type formats. And then there's 120 points from discussion boards. There are 3 different discussion boards. Each one requires a student to make an initial post and then 6 additional posts. And that's over the course of the week. And the students have the opportunity to provide feedback on each other on what their arguments are and what their justification is. Sometimes I've done the discussion boards where the group talks to themselves on each discussion board, but most often I use it as the discussion board is across the entire class. So each group is not isolated for the entire class. Sometimes they come together as the entire group. And this is all about low stakes grading. It's trying to get the pressure off of the instant performance and onto closer to the alignment to the idea that students need to create a product and that they need to create a product by a deadline following certain guidelines. And the group project lets you help students develop that skill set. I use rubrics. As Han Nee said, rubrics are key. They tell the students what they want to know and what you want them to know and how you're going to be grading it. So the rubrics are always up there and they are aligned with the student learning outcomes. And then how do I grade individual work? Well, they have to document. Each project presentation has to indicate what each member contributed on that particular part of the project, and they have to document it through their work, through their discussion boards, through their notes from their collaborate sessions, from the work that they're presenting, the edits maybe in a Word document for track changes, that kind of stuff. They have to document that they were actively involved. No participation, 0 points. You can easily make that edit when you're grading group work in Blackboard, or partial credit. So how do I select the groups? Well, it's a bit touchy right now. We want to make sure that we're thinking about ways that we can enhance student engagement. And right now, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a huge factor in how we do things and how we are trying to make sure that everyone has an equal voice at the table. So in forming my groups, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not introducing any bias. Also, our institution has a strategic plan, and there might be goals or action items in there that you want to consider thinking about how your selection of groups might impact those areas. I typically have classes that are 25 to 30 people. I create groups of 5 or 6 people, so I'm typically managing 5 groups for any one class, which is manageable. Also, by the end of the semester, this group size still has sufficient active critical mass when students start to, we have some students withdraw. Group selection methods. Han Nee mentioned one that has not worked well for me in the past, and that was putting the names in the hat or selecting numbers and putting them in groups. The last time I did that, I had a couple who insisted on being together, and they would not separate into separate groups. So I don't do that one anymore. That's my experience. As Han Nee said, you can random assign them in Blackboard, and I've done that sometimes. I also use a lot of icebreakers, and perhaps the students will have a common icebreaker thing on their bucket list. Prevalent here, people want to parachute out of an airplane, something I've done. They want to see the Northern Lights. They want to go to Italy. They want to go to Hawaii. It's high on their list. They'll be knocking on your door, Han Nee. But maybe you can group them because they have this common outside goal, or maybe by their major or their preferred industry. I've also heard a lot lately about maybe using GPAs, and that might bring more voice to the table. That by grouping people with similar GPAs together, the high achievers don't silence the low achievers. And that by doing that, everyone has more of a voice, so that you're not intimidated by someone who maybe has a better grasp of the concept. I haven't tried that yet, but I might. I've also done the typical line them up by height, just plain line them up, or by birthdays. And one trick that I heard recently was to ask everyone to line up by birthdays, but introduce a little bit of a disability question in there by not letting them speak, making them communicate their birth date and month and date by something else. So that's always worked. And then they count off so that it's random at that point. Additional thoughts. There's always more to think about. And as Han Nee said, that you need buy-in. And so as a group, the class creates the rules. And this also is part of the HR process, right? There are work rules, and we have to comply with our work rules. So the class comes together to make some of these. They make the attendance rule. Do you have to show up? If you don't show up, what happens? If you show up late, what happens? And they're actually harder on each other than I would have been. What's the penalty for late work? Is late work accepted at all, or does it get 0 points? And then what does participation mean? What does it mean to be an active participant and contributor to the class, not only to the group work, but to the overall class? And then we have an issue with the roles. We know that some people are vocal and will take a lead and get it done, and then other people just follow along. We get into maybe the groupthink situations that Han Nee was mentioning. So I try to not leave it so much as a leaderless group, but I'm trying to develop new strategies for helping the lead position rotate, so that person A would be responsible for coordinating and presenting the job description, the first part of the project. Person B would be responsible for contributing the second part, the talent acquisition plan, and so that the jobs would rotate and everyone would have a key role at one point. So there are lots of ways that group work can grow not only the performance in the class and students understanding the concept, but really have an overall impact on the entire college. Well, I think I went through 2 there. And I'd love to hear from you. I'm on LinkedIn, Ann Williams, DBA, CPCU, CEBS, or you can email me. And I really appreciate being a part of your lives today, and for Blackboard for bringing us all together to talk about how to improve student engagement. Thank you.
Hello.
That's better.
Typical 2020 type of situations, huh? The troubles of this new normal. All right. So, well, thank you so much, Dr. Williams, Dr. Chong, for all this information. I love this presentation. There are a few questions that came up. One of them had to do with sharing that contract that was referenced. I posted the link earlier in the chat, but I'm posting that again right now. But there are some other ones. I think some of them that came up earlier in the presentation, you already covered, especially Dr. Williams, on how, for instance, how do you manage participation in groups, or how do you manage those groups? But there's one that mentions about how do you manage participation from adult learners? So I don't know if you have any insight on that, either one of you, Dr. Chung or Dr. Williams.
For me, I teach at a master level course. My learners are typically teachers themselves, the Master of Education Leadership. So they are busy. They're all adult learners, right? And so I have found that giving them autonomy to decide early on. So the expectation is that they meet and they engage. Now, when they meet, how they meet, and all of that, I leave a lot of the choices early on to them to start thinking about it. That's where the group contract really comes in handy, because then during that stage, during the forming stage, right, they get to talk about these things early on instead of waiting till the end and then, we didn't meet because I was too busy, right? I think giving them the autonomy to decide early on how they meet, how they're going to do this, what's the best way to do it really does help. Yeah.
So I am dealing with the other side of the student body. My students are oftentimes first generation right out of high school. And one of the first things we talk about is, what does it mean to be an adult? And we say that everyone in the room, we're going to agree, is an adult. Even if they're 17, they're an adult, and that their performance is up to them. And we talk a bit about the 10,000 hours to excellence idea, and that Malcolm Gladwell has written about. And the idea is that it's their responsibility. I have never had a group completely fall apart. Sometimes it takes a while for someone to get started. I put up announcements every week. This is what you're supposed to be working on. Have you been in on your group? Are you looking for the emails? Are you looking for the invitations to the Collaborate sessions? Are you reaching out to your peers? And if anyone comes to me and says that their group is not working, the first thing they have to do is tell me what they did, prove what they did to try to reach out to the others. And it comes together.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Earlier in the presentation, also, Dr. Williams, you were making reference about authentic assessment and the different strategies, and you mentioned, or you made reference to leveraging portfolios. So they were wondering, what portfolio tool do you use?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
So our college has not adopted a portfolio tool. So I've encouraged the students to create their own memory bank. That I encourage them to do all their work, no matter what they're going to upload into a text box on Blackboard or an assignment on Blackboard, that they create it all as we preferred Word documents. We're an Office 365 kind of shop. And so they're encouraged to save everything that way for themselves.
And I think by that, by you sharing that, also you sort of answer another question, which was, how do you, when you have these groups, and going back earlier in the presentation from Dr. Chong, you mentioned collaborate. So how do you share those documents with them? But I think, you mentioned Office 365 and Google Documents earlier in the presentation. That's where everybody comes together and collaborates to create a document, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, or maybe I'm way off, and then you need to correct that.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it, Edgar.
Yeah, Edgar. So I think Google Docs are great, and Google in general, right? Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Slides, those are great for collaboration. But also sometimes our groups just wanted to share a PDF or a document. So in that way, that's why when I mentioned the tools that I enable, one of the tools I enable is the sharing of files. So if you just want to drop a file to share with your group members, you can use the share file tool in your group to do that. Or I also encourage them in their group discussion forum to share the file there, to give it some context. So you're not just dropping something, right? You're saying, hey, I found this interesting thing. Let's discuss about it in our next meeting, for example. And then that can have a threaded discussion following the file that was being shared. So I think that would be my preferred method of telling my students, if they have something that they want to share and have actionable items about, to post them in the group discussion forum.
Okay. And I was peeking at the chat because there's some activity, and I'm making sure I don't miss any more questions. One more question, and again, it relates to a previous question about adult learners, but I lost my question there. So how do you manage participation from group members or students? I think, again, I think you have answered that in different ways, but I don't know if you have any more statements to add related to that.
So I give individualized feedback in the rubrics on each presentation piece. And I also, as I said, reach out by group announcements to the entire class, or by email to individual students that are struggling, to remind them of what the requirements are and what they need to do. I do include a syllabus quiz in the very beginning of the course, which gets towards Han Nee's contract, that they understand what the requirements are, and they've already agreed that they're going to follow those rules about presentation of the material.
Excellent. Well, I think we have covered all the questions. So I do want to thank Dr. Williams, Dr. Chong, for your time today. I love the presentation. I enjoy authentic assessment, just collaboration, work, and all of those things. I think they bring a lot of value to the learning process, but also the teaching process as well. So thank you again for so much for this presentation. One more question. Somebody asked if this will be available later on, and the answer is yes. I don't have the specific details, but you will get a follow-up email. So again, thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank
Aloha.
you.
Have a great day.